Alright guys, so welcome back. Here's a lock sport video. I haven't done one in a while. Haven't done a lot of lock sport in a while. Been a bit busy with other stuff, and yeah, so today again we are back to the Abus 7240. As you can see, they're my favorite. I have a few of them. The 7240 is the shorter shackle one, the longer shackle 7240 HB40, same mechanism. The only difference I have found is that if you, well, what we get here in SA, if you look at the keyways, one points one way, the other one points the other way. And that's the only difference between the two different types that you get here. So it's a bit of a lottery what you're getting. One is a left hand, one is a right hand. And I believe when you look at it on the top, it's the right hand para keyway. It just kind of makes it really a lot harder to get attention and to hold in there. But yeah, that's the only difference. So we have a number of them, and what we're going to do is just go over a disassembly and reassembly video here. Let's find one with a bit of a keyway. So we'll start with this one, I think. Doesn't matter about the rest, they go all a lot. Now, this is the thing with these, is that you can get pins for them, but you can only get driver key pins. You can't get the driver pins. So I've actually made my own pins on the lathe because they tend to wear out, I've found. You have to use very light tension on this lock. Otherwise, you wear out the edge, the inner edge on the spool pin. Camera is not going to focus on that, but the inside edge, so it doesn't, it makes it a lot harder to get yourself into a false set. And with these, you need very little tension, and you need just get yourself into a false set. And found the one that's giving you counter rotation, and it's job done. So here we go. I like to just put a clip on so I can keep the keys. The core is not, it's a dead core, if they would call it that. So you don't need a lot of tools to do it. So we are just going to cut this one. It's Phillips head 2 screwdriver, and that's going to pop in there. And I'm going to dump it. I'm not even going to pinning tray. Oh, we can try. I do like these little COVID Instruments pinning trays. This is a very long screw, so got to be a little bit patient with it, and you'll see your core will drop out. We're going to get to the core later. Inside there is the actuator, and then you got your shackles with ball bearings. So, all right, bugger. I'm going to try and get that out. It doesn't always, there's also a little ring in there, so one has to be very careful with the whole thing. It's a little aluminium ring, and there is a tab that protects it, so we need that. Just take note of the orientation, that one little tab points at the bottom of the keyway, and inside there is the core. Now the actuator itself is, make sure it's open, and that way, and hopefully it will come apart or not. I don't know. Because I have seen someone struggling trying to get this back together, and his was actually out. So let's see if we can get ours out by kind of forcing it out. Maybe a hammer. There we go. It's a good solid knock and a spring. So here we have some components. Love it when you lose these bearings. Then we've got the core. Now, to remove the core, obviously it needs to be in the open position, so I'm not really going to bugger around with picking it. Remember, it's at an angle, and I'm actually just going to pull the circlip and dump the load. I'm going to make sure it's tuned so we don't end up damaging the springs. These little circlips are very, 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 very tricky because they actually, here's the tip, right? This video is about tips and tricks of the ABUS 7240. Don't have it in the open position because then you can remove the circlip, because the circlip has a little tab over here, as you can see there. That must fit in that groove at the bottom over there. So remove that first, get it out the way. That way you can dump. Which way is it going to go? It's going to go that way. Woo! There we go. All shot out. Everything has left the building. I'm going to leave the springs in because, well, there's no real point in taking them out, because, I mean, when you're putting the springs in, it's really quite simple. But not, this is a normal pair of tweezers, and I found the pinning tweezers that you get. I have a set of pinning tweezers from Sparrows. They are, right, there goes the spring. They are magnetized, so it presents a bit of a problem when you're trying to get them out or get them in or any of that, because they just want to pull out again with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video and get some light on the subject. That's what I'm going to do. Right, so we have a bit of light on the subject, and I found the other spring. And then I try to grab it, and it shot off across the room again. Now, the 7640, and this is one of the things I like about ABUS locks, is that they are quite predictable. Generally, on an ABUS, your first pin is going to be a standard driver pin, and the rest are going to be spools. So with your 7240, it's a 6-pin lock, and your the same story. Your very first pin is always standard, and then it's got 6 spool pins. So we've got all of that here. We've got some springs in, and I actually do this one by one, but because most of the springs didn't come out, I don't want to take too long putting springs in. I'm pretty sure you guys know how to put springs in. But there's a trick. Don't use magnetic tweezers, like the pinning tweezers are magnetic, because they just pick up springs and everything all over the show. It's a real pain. So now we have to get the driver pins in. So our core goes in like this. And if you look at the core, right, you can get yourself a set of plug followers. Now, these never made sense to me. Why the hell is there a groove there and that's flat and that looks like that? Because that doesn't. So is that for can't be, I don't know. That would then just go like that, or how? So what I do personally is I make my own ones out of drill bits, because drill bits offer you a variety of sizes, and all you need is a grinder, and you've got yourself a plug follower in exactly the right size. So you don't really need a veneer, you just need an empty plug. And when you look at the diameter of the plug, that will take a 10 mil drill bit. So there is a 10 mil drill bit. So, and that's the one. That's the first one. I mean, you can also machine this out of aluminium if you really have a lathe and a mill and some time. But actually, all I did was I cut a groove in there with a grinder like that, and then I cut an angle out like that. And this I find is easier when you're using it as a plug follower. And this groove over here is easier to drop your driver pin in, and then it will. You can just shift it around, especially with the 6 pinners, because they go quite deep, so you could struggle. Let me show you. So that key is going to go in like that. So we need that bit on the side that the key is going to go on, and then we're going to start right at the back. And as you can see, that groove is going to go vertical, because the plug does, or not the plug, the Bible does go at an angle. So we're going to sort of keep that orientation right. And I'm just going to drop in, remember, a spool pin first. Now it's in there, and now the difficult bit obviously would be to get it lined up. And it's no longer difficult if you have a little groove in there, because it's holding it, as you can see, holding it really nicely. I can turn it around, I can turn it backwards and forwards. So quite frankly, and manufacturers take note, that's really the best plug follower. I mean, if I really wanted to, 1, 2, 3, I should be above the hole. I'm not. This is always a struggle because it's right at the back and it's in. I can slide forward a little bit. Do the next one. That's the best way to do a plug follower as far as I'm concerned, because that way you're not trying to get a driver pin right in the back and try and push it down against the spring and struggle. You can just have it aligned like that. So we're on to the third one. I actually wanted to pause the video. These are the driver pins that I made. They are spool pins there that you can't really see that well. They are the correct dimensions, and yeah, I made them, and for all my abuses, because I've really picked the crap out of them, and they pick like new now. And it's not worth it. You can't just buy a pack of the spool pins. You have to buy the whole plug, and it's almost as much as a new lock. So you might as well get a new lock, and then so that's a sort of situation you'll find yourself in if you're using too much tension on your lock, on these locks. They don't like it. So I paid my Chinese tax, got a couple of brass rods, chucked them in the lathe, made some driver pins, and that was it. So I hope you're following. I know it's a bit of a tricky video. So here you can see better. Let's just try and get some focus. I've just orientated that. I can navigate it onto the spring, and then I just push it down with an old pick and slide forward. So you can see if you're using a drill bit, you've got a nice snug fit. It's going to fit nicely. It's you can even buy a 10.1 or a 10.2 if you go to a special machinist shop. But most of the sizes really are just that. You can see the first pin is always just a straight driver pin. So I popped it in there, and I can navigate it around, slide it in, and the plug is in. So that is our driver pin. So remember, from the back, spool pins, and then the one right in the front. And you know what? I've actually done this the wrong way around, haven't I? Because this one shot off into the distance. That's never returning. That is never ever returning. That's for sure. That one is at the back. Gets a bit finicky when your hands are a bit old, but we've popped at the back. Should be a spool pin, and we have put ourselves standard pin at the back. So I'm going to grab this one from here. And I'm going to go searching in my box. I find the pull box is the best. I know I've got standard pins in here. If not, I'll have to pause and go hunt the pin again. Where are they? It's from a Squire. What we could also do is make the whole thing good to keep spares, you know. That's actually a matlock in there. Right, no joy. That, let's see if we can find it. I shall pause again. Would you believe I found it? So I have swapped out that, and then of course our first pin. So just to keep this short, I'm gonna drop that in there. And very, very, very carefully move back so I can find the spring. There's a little spring. Right now, we got all our driver pins. Plug follower is nice if you just want to change the key order. You don't actually want to get any of the other, you don't want to sit and struggle with driver pins. So this kind of thing is nice because now what I'm going to do, I know the orientation goes that way. So I'm going to keep that way. And then I want that to follow real nice. You know, if you're trying to line them up, you're often going to get a gap. That's going to follow real nice, but obviously we need some pins in the key. So the easiest way to do it, let's just have a look at it. Look at the key first, and then I leave the key in, and I sort of guess where they're going. You know, obviously you can dump your pins into a pinning tray. And see that one's a little high. That guy there, so he doesn't go there. But if you lose your order, this is how you're going to do it. It's a little lower. And I do believe they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different sizes of key pin. It always amazes me at the amount of different sizes. Like I know the Squire only has 4. That must be the last one. And you do want to make sure your key is in properly when you test it. Otherwise, you're going to have some trouble and you're going to pick it open. Right, so our key is, if you're struggling to pick it, now would be a great time to get your pick in there. Make sure they're all down. And especially if you have a longer pin somewhere and a shorter one behind it, see if your pick can get past without lifting that one. If it is lifting it, constantly lifting it, chances are you're getting yourself in an overset, and that's why you can't pick it. And make sure your pick is clearing the keyway and everything. So this is a good point to get, you know, just test your pick, see what works on the lock generically. So now remember, it goes down this way. The Bible sits down there. That's going to go in there, and then I'm going to get it roughly lined up. I like to hold it there and pull the key out. Now comes another tricky bit. This is also where I've lost stuff before, is getting this on. So actually do it with a cloth over your hands. I can't do that now because same with dial veneers. You're taking that pin off, just put a tea towel over because that thing shoots across the room. It's gone forever. And then remember, now that goes in the bottom. You do need to ensure that it does get exactly in the groove. So you kind of got to line that little tab up with its groove and give it a shove. Then test without everything shooting over here. So don't do a 180, just test that it's running smoothly. And your core is back, it's assembled. But now comes a bit that breaks your heart because you think, oh, what have I done? What have I done? I have, I don't know how it goes back together. I don't know. I don't know. So here's a short side and there's the short side there. There's a long side there. So obviously it must go like that. There are only two bearings. Our spring goes in first on the long side. So just to show you, now it can bouncy bounce, and we need to get that in. Now, for the funnest, trickiest bit, when your lock is locked, the ball bearings are out, but it's very difficult to get the ball bearings in to stay in, because if you put them in now, they really are just, you can see how it's moving. So you got to get that actuator in. It only goes in that way. Okay. It will only go in that way because of this tab. So those ball bearings need to be right back. So you kind of find the sweet spot on this. So when you put the other one in, and now you're trying to get it in, they're going to flop around. So this is why you will find a lot of locks have got grease in there. So here's the trick. Even a little bit of Vaseline will do. Any grease, not to lubricate. It's not really for lubrication. Grease just helps it stick. So I'm just going to drop them in there with the grease, because I don't want to put them down on the pinning tray. So just a little bit. That's probably a bit much. The grease is for sticky. It's not really for lubrication. In your lock itself, you are not going to use a heavy lubricant like grease. You're going to use a light lubricant like Avis Lock Lube, Houdini, you name it. So now I'm going to try this, because you see it's got two grooves there. I'm going to try this without locking it. And just try and get it in these grooves. So we're back to our pick. That goes all the way through. That goes some of the way through. Aha! Now, see, it's holding it. I'm holding it up, and that's out the way. Let's see if this will go in. Let's not have this whole thing dismantle itself, because this spring, oh my word, you're gonna create a job if you dismantle it. And I have grease all over the bloody tweezers, so you actually, during this process, want to keep your shackle dead still. And now I'm just going to wiggle it until that finds its seat. Even if we have to lock it, it's also good. There you go. Probably easier to close the shackle. And I actually found that when I closed the shackle, the whole thing sort of lifted and then dropped in. So both balls are in place. And I'm quite sure this is the bit that you struggle with the most. The trick is grease. Don't forget your little aluminium ring. I don't know what it does. I don't know what it's called. But it is circular. It is aluminium. So for this purpose, We will call it the aluminium ring. And remember that little tab goes down. Something to do with, yes, that's what the tab does. You see, when you turn it, it only allows you to turn it so far. That's what it's there for. That's your lock body back together. Now let us drop in. It's closed. Remember, I had to close. I actually had to close it to get those ball bearings in. So you have to fidget with that. That's it. Before we do anything, let's just give it a test. Ta-da! That works. Let's do it again. Ta-da! That works. I always like to test it a few times. Pop the screw in. So it's a very, very good build. These locks are very good. And they're very precise. And the problem is their precision makes them a lot easier to predict because they are to pick because they're predictable. And there you have it. Faber 7240 rebuilt. I do hope this video helps and thank you for watching.